So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the Honourable Jim Flaherty. I don't think he needs a great introduction. He's a candidate for Oshawa Whitby and has been, and by his peers, called possibly the best finance minister in the world. Don't believe anybody internally on that. Believe international bodies. The OECD recently said that we are amongst the best of the economies in the G7, and Canada is just rocking on. People are prosperous. There's going to be lower taxes, and it's going to be good news for families in Etobicoke Centre. And I'd like to introduce Councillor Doug Ford. The Ford family in Etobicoke are obviously icons. Especially with their dad, Doug Sr., who occupied a seat beside the Honourable Jim Flaherty in the Ontario Legislature. Now Doug, with his brother Rob, are going to lead Toronto in amazing new directions. Obviously, the linkage between the City of Toronto and the federal government is going to be extremely strong. Etobicoke is going to do well, as will all of Toronto. And thankfully, Rob Ford, his worship, is the Mayor of Toronto. With his strong right hand, his brother Doug, and thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So you had some questions?
Yeah. I'd like to. Yes, I have some questions for Minister Flaherty, and I represent Incronet Media. And actually, if you can tell us about Canadian role in G7 and OECD.
G7 and OECD. Well, we played a major role during the financial crisis. The decision making in the G7 and the G20. The OECD is part of those meetings around the table. The first major summit meeting we had was in November 2008 in Washington. President Bush was still present. He chaired the meeting, and that's where the big decision was made for the G20 countries to make substantial investments in infrastructure and stimulate their economies at 4% of GDP over 2 years. Canada kept that obligation. That's why we had the stimulus budgets, the two of them, and that's why we ran a significant deficit. But it was necessary to protect our country and preserve jobs. I can tell you we were concerned back then that we would have double-digit unemployment in Canada. There was tremendous uncertainty around the world, and people forget rather quickly how dangerous that time was. And I use the word carefully. We could have had millions of people unemployed in Canada, as we had in the 1930s. So the Prime Minister and I made the big decision to run substantial deficits for 2 years. But we put a time limit on it, and that money is running out now, and now we'll move back to balanced budgets. But Canada went into the recession better prepared than any other country in the world because we have been running balanced budgets, paying down debt, and we've come out of it stronger than any of the other advanced economies in the world. So Canada's in good shape now. It's a long answer, I'm sorry, but you know, you see what's happening in Portugal now. Yeah. We saw Ireland and Greece last year. We see the tragedies in Japan, and that has economic consequences, particularly in the auto business in Ontario, which matters a lot. And we have instability in some of the European banks still. We have a very weak U.S. housing market, which is continuing to be very weak and is not likely to come back anytime soon. These are all economic concerns. We're meeting in Washington, the G7 finance ministers, on Thursday night this coming week, and I'll be there. And then on Friday, the G20 ministers and the IMF. Once again, trying to avoid a crisis like we had back in 2008. Anyway, very long answer, but that's where we are. Canada's doing great.
One is how you feel as the best minister of financing in the world.
Well, surviving matters. I've survived. I'm now the senior minister, the senior finance minister of the G7. And I think there are only 2 ministers in the G20 that have been there longer than me, and they're not from democracies, I can assure you. So among the democracies, Canada has longevity now. We have been the government for more than 5 years through a very, very difficult time. The Prime Minister and I never thought we would go through this economic crisis that we went through. We were concerned back in 2006 about weakness in the U.S. economy because of the size of the U.S. economy and how much we trade with the United States, and we still are. These deficits and debt issues in the United States need to be addressed, and with a longer-term plan. They can't go on spending money as they are. There's a limit. As we all know, there's no free lunch at the end of the day, and that applies to countries too. So they have to pull it together with a plan. I know Secretary Geithner and President Obama are trying to do that. They've had I think they've overcome their most recent crisis last night about funding the government, but they need a longer-term plan, and I know they're trying to work on it.
Minister, if I could ask,
Yeah.
can you tell us about the O'Flahertys in Galway in the medieval times? What kind of people warriors?
My family historically comes from Connemara, from County Galway, in the west of Ireland. The city is Galway City, which has grown a great deal over the years. I go back as much as I can. It's a beautiful part of the world, and Galway is a walled city, an old historic city. And my family was in the county outside there, where they were known as pirates and pillagers. They were married. Grace O'Malley was married into them, and so on. And every once in a while they'd go into the city of Galway and go through the gates, and they would say they would pillage, as they say, in the city. And so there's in Gaelic over the wall, the entrance to the city of Galway. It's loosely translated as "God save us from the wrath of the O'Flahertys," which is good for a finance minister, probably. Save us from the wrath of taxes, which we will. We're the lower tax guys.
Now, when you mention taxes, actually I heard from big three in accounting companies that Canada have to be tax-preferred destination in the world right now. And what is actually your intention to keep this trend?
Yeah, the IMF says Canada is the best place to invest in the next 5 years. I mean, it's a great advantage for our country. We've been reducing taxes since 2007, business taxes and other taxes. Of course, we reduced the GST by 2 percentage points, as we said we would. We reduced income taxes by about $3,000 per family, average family in Canada, and business tax. The Liberals, by the way, voted for these tax reductions, including Mr. Ignatieff. And now, of course, he changes his mind later on. But we will have the business tax rate down to 15% federally as of January 1st next year. And we have most of the provinces in Canada, including all the large population provinces, except Quebec, of course, who are reducing their corporate tax rates to 10%. And that will give us a combined rate of 25%. Tremendous branding advantage for Canada around the world, where business people are looking where to invest, and we can say, boom, 25%, that's our basic business tax rate in Canada, which isn't the lowest in the world, by the way. The UK is going to 23% because they're in a very serious economic situation, and they're trying to stimulate economic activity. President Obama wants to go in the same direction. So, you know, the majority of countries in the Western world, industrialized countries, are all going in that direction. At 25% will be about the OECD average, but it is a competitive advantage for us, particularly vis-a-vis our biggest competitor, which is the United States, which has significantly higher corporate taxes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Flaherty, the Liberals are pushing the health costs.
Yes.
In the 2 weeks they're starting to push, the health costs is going to be unbelievable.
Yeah.
And as we go door to door, what is the message we should be telling the people? This is raised, this has been brought into this election. How do we counter that? We are trying to promote.
Yeah. You know, the campaign is going well. Our campaign is going well. Ted's campaign is going well. Nationally, we're doing well. We're doing very well in the GTA. I've been through a lot of these campaigns against the Liberals. You know what they're going to do. They're going to try to change the subject to areas that are provincial jurisdiction. Then they're going to say Prime Minister Harper's mean and he's not nice. You know, it'll be personal attacks. Then there'll be process attacks. It'll be about somebody not being allowed in a meeting or something like that. It won't be anything substantive. It won't be anything the federal government's responsible for, like, you know, managing the economy of the country, right? Things that actually matter to people in the country. On healthcare, the Prime Minister made it clear yesterday, and so did I on television last night, that we We're committed to 6% increases in healthcare transfers by the province, by the federal government to the provinces. That agreement is there till 2014. We've already built into our budget track, we've built into our spending assumptions 6% going forward, which is exactly what Ignatieff has said. So we're all on the same page. There's no daylight between the two parties on that. And we all know with an aging population that healthcare is going to be a significant expense going forward. And we still have to talk to the provinces about how long will the agreement be for, how can we make sure that the money is spent effectively and efficiently. We can't just keep throwing money at it, but we know that it'll take at least 6%, so we're committed to that, and it's in the budget track. So you can just say that. We're going to keep going the way we've been going.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, well, thank you to everybody for all your questions.
I have only one question for Mr. Ford.
Yes.
Because 3 generations of the Forders are in this area, and what is your legacy and how you will help Ted Opitz, his campaign?
We've been conservatives for 30 years in this area. We've always helped provincially and federally, and we're out here today to help Ted and door knock and get our supporters out, as we brought a number of our supporters with us. And we look forward to having Ted as the next MP in Ottawa for Etobicoke Centre.
And I guess that's a perfect segue into the next phase of the operation, to go out and win some converts out on the streets. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to a mall and
Well, we'd like a bunch of folks to get maps from, we'd like a bunch of folks to get maps from Zed and start doing the door-to-door stuff. And in the meantime, Doug, Jim, and Ted, if you guys could hit Ridgeview Plaza, you know where that is, right? And blow through there with some stuff that's just straight, you know where it is. And then catch up. We're doing the area south of the Kingsway, between, you know, that, we'll give you a map.
So we're starting at Flast and moving down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.